Hello there, welcome to the Football Bloc. My name is Brandon, and today I'm going to give you my predictions for the 2025 Gold Cup quarterfinals. So if that sounds interesting, let's hop right into it.
One step beyond.
So the group stage of the Gold Cup has concluded, and we have 8 teams left. Now, 4 of those teams will go on to the semifinals, and the other 4 will be going home. I'm going to look at each of these matchups here, look at how these teams line up against each other, and then, of course, a score prediction for who I think will go through to the semifinals. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into it because we've got a lot to talk about here. And the first game we're going to look at is Panama versus Honduras. And this is a very interesting matchup when you consider that these teams had very, very different paths up until this point. I think Panama, in terms of just playing style, is probably the best team this tournament so far. We've seen just electric, very fun, aesthetically pleasing football from the Panamanians. This is a very good squad that has been building up for the past few years. We saw them make it to the final of the 2023 Gold Cup. They got to, I think it was 4th place of the 2023 Nations League as well. They pulled off some shock results at the 2024 Copa America, getting all the way to the knockout rounds. They're eliminating the U.S. And then they got to the final of the 2025 Nations League as well, only narrowly missing out to Mexico. This is a very talented squad. Yes, they don't have Coco Carrasquilla, which is going to be, I think, a big loss for them. But a lot of their other players have been showing up. Ismael Diaz, top scorer of the tournament with 5 goals. Argument for best player of the tournament so far. But there's a star-studded squad behind those guys as well. Honduras, on the other hand, has had a very weird run to the knockarounds. They started off the tournament with an absolutely atrocious 6-0 drubbing to Canada, but they were able to bounce back in their next few games. They picked up some crucial points from El Salvador and Curacao, and that win there in particular against Curacao punched them through to the knockout rounds. Now, I think that they did a phenomenal job, a very admirable job to bounce back from that awful result in the first game. I mean, we've seen this happen before where teams lose so heavily like that. It completely ruins the mentality of the team, and then they go on to lose all the rest of their games pretty handedly. That was not the case here. Honduras was able to bounce back, but even with that resurgence, you can still see that there are some visible flaws with the side. Unfortunately, Honduras is nowhere near as talented as they used to be back in the day, so there is just, on paper, a talent gap. But also, if you just look at the way that the team is set up, they did get lucky in their last 2 games, even though it was a much improved performance. So as a result, I think this is going to be a pretty convincing win for Panama. If you just look at the amount of goals that Panama has scored, whether it be the 5-2 game against Guadeloupe or the 4-1 victory over Jamaica, they always have outclassed the teams so far in this tournament and outgunned them as well. Now, they do concede a few goals. Their defense is not particularly strong. I do think Honduras will be able to grab a goal here, but I'm going to say a 4-1 to Panama. I think it's going to be a convincing win there. Now, in this game, we're saying it's going to be a goal fest. The next game we're going to look at, Mexico versus Saudi Arabia, I think is going to be the complete opposite. I don't think we're going to see a lot of chances in general in this game. And this is a fun matchup because Saudi Arabia is not from CONCACAF. They're not from North America. They are an invited team to this tournament. And we've seen this many times before in the Gold Cup. Most recently in 2021, we had Qatar in the tournament, and in 2023 as well. In the past, I believe South Korea has participated. Brazil and Colombia have participated as well. And Saudi Arabia didn't bring their A squad to this tournament. Now, a big part of that is because a lot of their top players are playing for Al Hilal in the Club World Cup at the same time, also in the United States, ironically. But also, there's also a lot of important games going on for Saudi Arabia coming up soon, World Cup qualifiers and things like that. And then Saudi Arabia is also trying to prepare their team for eventually hosting the World Cup in 2034. That being said, they haven't had the most impressive performance this Gold Cup. It was a very dull 1-0 victory over Haiti that saw them open the tournament with a win, a crucial win, especially when you consider the fact that they lost to the United States and they didn't get blown out or anything like that, and they did create some dangerous chances, but they still ended up losing there. And then they tied Trinidad and Tobago 1-1 in the last game. It was a game that I think Trinidad was probably the better team, and Saudi Arabia did get a little lucky. Compare that to Mexico. Mexico, the tournament favorites going into this Gold Cup, reigning Gold Cup champions. They also won the Nations League. Now, this is a resurgence or a new era of the Mexican team, I will say, under Javier Aguirre. He has come back. But this Mexico side, yes, they have heavily improved from where they were in 2024 in terms of, their Copa America Nations League losses there. The squad hasn't really improved that much. The team mentality has improved, the tactics have improved, but the squad is still not that great. The squad is very slow, in my opinion. I think that's one of the worst parts about this team. And they're also very reliant on particular players, but that'll drag you through most Gold Cup games, especially when you look at the level of opposition they're playing. Now, if this was a full-strength Saudi Arabia team, we saw it at the World Cup, how it's just impressive a full-strength Saudi Arabia team could be. Also with Hervé Renard, he has come back, the manager there. But this is not a full-strength Saudi Arabia team. It just also doesn't really look like the Saudi players really care all that much, unfortunately. Now, I don't think Mexico is going to blow them out of the water. First of all, that's just not how they play. This is a very pragmatic style. They rely heavily on set pieces. But also, like I said, Mexico has their own limitations. I don't think that they'd be able to defeat Saudi Arabia with a heavy victory here, even if they wanted to. But I do think that they will clearly be the better team. I'm going to say 1-0 to Mexico. Set piece goal, a typical Mexican victory under Javier Aguirre that we have seen several times already in this tournament. On to the next match, we have Canada versus Guatemala in a game that could be a potential banana skin for the heavy favorites here, which is Canada. Canada headed into this tournament, starting it with a 6-0 smashing victory over Honduras, as we have mentioned before. Super impressive victory there. But it's weird. I think Canada maybe got way too overly confident from that game. They perhaps thought that the rest of the teams in their group should be just as easy to beat, and that was not the case. I mean, they just tied Curacao in a game that they were the better team, but still they weren't able to grab the win. They kind of bottled it there towards the end of the game, in my opinion, and then they were able to defeat El Salvador. But this game was a very strange game where El Salvador was the better team up until they got a red card. And then, in fact, by the end of the second half, they got a second red card. That completely ruined all the game plans that they had. And when you have 9 players going up against 11, of course, the team with 11 players is going to come out on top. And that's what happened there in that game, which punched Canada through to the knockout rounds. Now, Guatemala has had some really high moments at this tournament. Their opening 1-0 victory over Jamaica was very impressive, and then there are other performances in this tournament that saw them earn their way to the knockout rounds have been equally impressive as well. Now, Guatemala does have their limitations. This isn't the most talented squad. They're no pushovers. They have some players that can do some serious damage to you. They have a very good goalkeeper as well, pretty solid at the back. This game will be a question of basically what Canada do we see. If it's the Canada team that's just not clinical, that's kind of being a little too relaxed, we could see a potential upset here from Guatemala. But if it's Canada that we saw that's sharp, that's ruthless, and on point, then we could see a heavy victory for Canada here. It's hard to say which way it'll go. I don't know. I'm feeling an upset. I think maybe Guatemala will come out on top. I think it'll be really close. You know, they're probably going to rely mostly on defensive tactics there. But I'm saying 1-1 after regulation time. Guatemala go through on penalties. The goalkeeper, Hagen there, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, is a very, very good goalkeeper, and I think he will pop up big for Guatemala here. Usually don't really see a lot of upsets in the Gold Cup, unfortunately. And when they do, it's kind of a one-off. It's not, you know, maybe like a tournament-wide thing. But I don't know. I think I'm feeling a lot of upsets for this Gold Cup for whatever reason. Now moving on to the last game, we have the United States, my team here, going up against Costa Rica. The United States are the hosts, and it's between them and Mexico for being the best team in the tournament favorites, you have to say, in terms of a realistic chance. Costa Rica are in that echelon that's always right behind the U.S. and Mexico, always fighting for the third best team in CONCACAF, or fighting for that title for the third best team in CONCACAF. And Costa Rica, after that famous 2014 generation, and then some of, I don't know if you would call it the next generation, but some of the new players coming in, after that, after those guys started to kind of get phased out of the team, they went through a very brief low point here. But now we're seeing a very interesting Costa Rican side where it's a mix of some veterans there. I mean, you still have Keylor Navas, you still have Calvo, but there's a lot of new guys into this team, like Ugalde, who has been their star man up top, one of the best players overall of this tournament. And it shows really where Costa Rica is not necessarily the most concise team. They're not usually that consistent. Sometimes they're not even consistent over 90 minutes of a game, a singular game there. And that was on full display where they had some beautiful attacking forays against Suriname, but Suriname was able to bite back and they almost ended up winning the game. It had to be a 4-3 victory comeback from Costa Rica there. But then we also saw them, play really well against Dominican Republic in a tough game. And then they went toe-to-toe with Mexico, and they didn't lose. It ended up being 0-0. It was a game that neither team had to win. And there was also the fear that whoever finishes second will have to play the U.S. So it did play a factor in there. And Costa Rica tried to win. But, it was a very close game. The points were split there. And I think that just goes to show how dangerous this Costa Rican side can be. Now, like I said, defensively, they're a little all over the place at times, but going forward, they are up there with Panama for being the most ruthless of the teams that we've seen so far in this Gold Cup. As for the United States, they topped their group 3 wins out of 3. But I don't think you can really take too much out of that. I still think that there's some glaring issues with this team, tactically, in terms of how the manager is able to motivate his players. Also, just the squad that we have, it's not necessarily an A squad. There's a lot of top players in there, but there's also a lot of top guys missing for various reasons. And also, I think they did benefit from and weaker opponents in the group stage. First game, we defeated Trinidad and Tobago 5-0, but again, it's, Trinidad and Tobago. This version of Trinidad and Tobago, which is not necessarily the most talented. And then the next wins that they had against Saudi Arabia and Haiti were not convincing at all. It was a 1-0 victory there, and then a 2-1 victory there. There isn't really a spark that I feel with this United States team. There's a few players that have been having good performances there, but it seems like they're, for the most part, just running through the motions. And that can be very dangerous because that confidence can set into your head and then quickly develop into overconfidence and into arrogance. And I'm going to predict a huge upset here. Yes, I know I'm an American, and I love this team, and I hope that I am wrong, but I really don't have a lot of trust in this team, especially when you look at this Costa Rican side that is so electric going forward. I think we're going to see an upset here. I think it's going to be 2-1 to Costa Rica. Like I said, Costa Rica's defense is not that strong. I do think the United States will be able to score a goal. They have enough firepower for that. But it's keeping them out at the other end and then just having a well put together, concise, and solid performance over 90 minutes that is concerning for me. And as a result, I'm saying Costa Rica will go through. So that has been my predictions for the quarterfinals of the Gold Cup in 2025. In terms of the teams I'm saying going through, we have Panama, Mexico, Guatemala, and Costa Rica. That would be a crazy semifinals if that does end up happening. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. I've dropped some hot takes here. Let me know if you agree or you disagree. Do you think that there is going to be any upsets at this stage of the tournament? If so, let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. Follow the Football Bloc on social media. But anyway, guys, my name is Brandon, and this has been the Football Bloc. I hope you have a nice rest of your night.
One step beyond.